Hello interwebbers, fellow mecha builders and hobbyists, and welcome to a complete build by Filbot. And today we're going to have a look at the FDV4 Mako. So we're actually going to do a complete build. So this is all of the components straight out of the box. I've not cleaned anything up as yet, so I'm going to do that as we go to give you an idea of just how easy this kit is to put together. And how long it'll take, including all of the prep as well. So first things first, I'm going to take a handful of tools. Really all we're going to need is a knife. I do have a pair of little pliers here. You can use little snips and a pair of tweezers just in case I need those as well. So first things I think when you take any kit is to make sure you have all of the correct components. I'm just going to have a look at the legs very quickly here. And what we should have are the two main sections of the legs, which we have the 2 feet. These are the 2 heel plates, so these go on the backs of the legs. And 2 little pieces, these are the hip caps, so they go on the outer edge of the hip, on the end of the leg. So I mean, this is a resin kit, so it's not plastic. And I think with any resin kit, it's always a good idea to make sure you spend a little bit of time looking at every single component. I mean, these are all cast by hand in silica molds, and that does mean from component to component and from batch to batch. There can be slightly different amounts of flash or mold lines. I mean, obviously we try and keep those to an absolute minimum, and you'll see as we go through the video just how little cleaning I have to do up. I mean, the casts themselves are pretty spot on. The other thing you'll notice as we go through, I'm just taking these off here, are little gates and feeds. So when they cast resin components from a silica mold, you have little channels, if you like, through which the resin meets the void that is going to be filled with the resin to make the piece. So when you take that out of the mold, you have the piece itself, and then you usually have some little rods or square sections that are just solid resin. We don't need those, so we just go and cut all of those off. A lot of them have been taken off before either yourself get them, when you buy them, but there are some smaller bits left that just need to be trimmed off. We try and make sure they are kept in places that are going to have as little effect on the model as possible, so we don't want these gates or feeds across big areas of detail. That just makes everything a little bit more difficult. So normally you should just be able to slice it off, and as you can see here, I'm just neatening it off, making sure it all fits, make sure everything is flat and flush as it should be. The knife I'm using is actually a surgical scalpel. I mean, a lot of people tend to use things like X-Acto knives. Personally, I find the scalpels a much better option. They are obviously not as durable as an X-Acto knife, but for me they keep their edge a little bit longer. I think whenever you're cutting anything like resin or indeed plastic, it's always best to have a really sharp blade. I mean, obviously the sharper blade, the less pressure you have to put on. As soon as you're starting to have to put large amounts of pressure on something, that's when you're more likely to slip and hurt yourself. So nice sharp blades all the time. Now I'm just taking the feeds off the bottom of the feet. So the rear toes, they have them right on the bottom. I mean, when you take those off, you take it right back to a flat area. So there should be no sign of that whatsoever once you've taken it off. And it's the same on the front toe as well. As you can see, that's the foot done really. Just blow some of these bits away, but that's it. As far as the foot's concerned, take those 3 pegs off. There's no mold lines, there's no bits of flash, really clean pieces. So there's a bit of a gate on there, so I'll just take that off. Just have a quick look on here. Now this back section of the leg normally has a feed in the middle of that, so just be careful when you're doing this just to take that off and just take it back to the flat bar that runs all the way down the back length of the leg. And there's a small mod line here, which I'll just take off. It's small enough just to scrape off with a knife. There's no major cutting or filling or anything to do. So we try and keep all of that to an absolute minimum. A couple of little bits of there. Just cut that little peg that has the remnants of a feed on the back of there as well. So just cut that so it's flat. No mod line down the front of the actual armour plate itself, which is great. Just have a quick look. Now the remains of a gate here. Just take this bit off. Now, when you're taking gates off, and obviously you're trimming resin or any kit really, you know, pay special attention to those parts of the kits that you know, fit together. You know, you want to make sure you've got as big a contact area as possible when you're gluing these things together. So, you know, anything that affects that contact area is something that needs sorting. So I'm just going to do the other heel plate as well. Now the heel plate actually has the hydraulic ram for the back of the leg. I mean, if you've seen the big kit, that's all separate. The FDV4 Mako, apart from being a much smaller kit, I tried to keep the component count down as low as possible. I mean, this kit is approximately 30 components, so there are 4 slight different versions of this kit, depending on how they were molded. So about 30 pieces, and the other variations of the Mako, so the white tip and the Basker, and also the FDV4 Mako with the rail cannon, all have, you know, roughly 30 to 35 components. So I mean, quite a complicated kit for this size, but you know, hopefully it goes together pretty well with as minimal preparation as necessary. So just taking the mod line off the back of the hydraulic ram there. Just do the gates off the bottom of this foot, so that just snaps quite easily off. And this one, now this one I don't want to damage the toe, so I'm just going to score the back of that feed with a knife. Just put a little dent in it and then snapping it. It should just break cleanly. I mean, resin is a little more brittle than plastic. I mean, you can often use that to your advantage, but just be careful not to put too much pressure on things, because things will just snap once you push them too far. So just making sure these bits are nice and clean. Give them a quick scrape. And there we go. So the hip caps, I'm going to leave those to last. I'll pop these up here out of the way for now. Okay, so now we've got the leg bit sorted, we're going to have a look at the hip. So this is really the centre of the model, I guess. I mean, the body fits on top of this. You know, the legs fit to this, so the rear plate fits this as well. So again, just take time, just make sure there's no massive mold lines. There's a little gate here right on the end of the fuel cell. Just make sure that goes. And this is the rear plate. Now this fits by, once you have a look at the hip, this just fits like a little peg and a hole on the back, so it's really easy to position. Again, just taking the feeds off these sections here. There should be 3. It's 1, 2, and there's the bit in the middle. That's not too bad actually. Okay, now I'm just going to sander these bits here. Now I do actually have a mold line down one edge. I'm just going to, those bits I've just cut off, just make those nice and smooth, and then just take this mold line off of this edge. Again, none of the mold lines are particularly big. It's on a flat area, there's no detail there really, it's just an edge of an armour plate, so quite comfortably take that off without affecting the model in any way, shape or form. Just cut the top of that bit off. Lovely. Now we've just obviously taken off the bit of that feed there, so I'm just double checking. A couple of feathery bits of resin. That's fine, all gone. So let's have a look at assembling this bottom half of the Mako. So we're not even 10 minutes in. Gonna get some super glue, show you how quickly this goes together. Now the hip plate and the hydraulic ram from the back sits into a recess, so you pop that in first under there, and then you lever the rest of it down, and there's some little pegs on the inside of this plate, and they just pop into the little holes on the side of this cylinder here. Now it's a slightly tight fit on the back. Now obviously, as I mentioned, I don't want to put too much pressure on there for the risk of snapping or bending anything, so I'm just going to take a little bit off of there, see if that fits in better. Yep, that's a much better fit. Okay, quick squeeze and that should just clip in. Yeah, okay, so just make sure still there's a bit of bend there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit more off the top. Just get my knife to scrape this off. Now it's probably not the fact that there's too much resin on the top of this bit, but rather the recess that it goes into is obviously a little bit more difficult to cut away. So I'm just going to take it off the top of here instead. Send that nice and flat. And this bit you won't be able to see obviously once it's all done anyway. And again, that's something else that a lot of the feeds we've tried to hide on bits that are not going to be visible. All aimed at making the kit as easy to put together and as little prep work as possible. Make sure this one fits. Okay, so blob of glue in there, just in those holes, and then a blob of glue in this recess. Put that up and then lever it down. Make sure those little pegs are in the holes. And just hold it for a couple of seconds. And then the amazing stuff. Oops, where is it? So cyanoacrylate activator. So any brand of this works really, but this just sets super glue a little bit quicker. I mean, super glue isn't super for its strength, it's super for how quickly it dries, and it takes moisture out of the air, which is why it's not a great thing to have on your skin. An activator sets it almost instantly, so within 2-3 seconds it's normally set enough. So we're going to do the same with this one. So we're just going to lightly sand the top of the hydraulic ram where the gate was. Slot that one in. That one fits much better. So again, quick blob of glue in there, one on either side. Slide that into there and lever it down and wait for it to click into place. And then once again, quick squirt of the activator. Done. Okay, so that's the two main sections of the leg done. So now what we'll do is going to fit the rest. Now the bottom of the leg has essentially a ball joint that just fits into a recess on the foot. Quite simple to put together, really. Just put the foot on the table or the surface. I would angle it slightly over to one side. There you go. You can tell from the side of it straight. And I would try and avoid lining all of the parts up perfectly. You'll see what I mean in a second. I'm just going to take the hip now. Now once I've got one leg sitting, as long as I keep the hip nice and straight, so it's not bending down in either the left side or the right side too much. Put my glue in there and just make sure the contact area is got plenty of glue on it. Stand it down, make sure that's nice and flat, and just hold it for a couple of seconds, let the glue grab, which it will do, and then back to the trusty activator. There we go. And then now what we can do is we can take the second leg, so let's just put the foot flat on the floor, or on the table rather, take the leg. Now we have a little bit of movement, we can move this around, we can tilt the leg till we find an angle we're happy with. So about there is okay. Now, as I mentioned about obviously not making sure everything is really pinned straight, everything look a little bit awkward. You know, this thing still has to stomp around a battlefield and keep its balance. So I would make sure you angle the legs outward, and obviously the same with the toes, but try not to line the leg and the toes up together, just so it looks a little bit more natural. I think if you stand up yourself and just look down at your feet at any point, you'll probably find for the most part your toes are ever so slightly angled out. There we go, a bit more activator, and that's set. Lovely. Okay, so now we've got that easy job, blob super glue in the recess on the foot. I'm just going to place that in so it's all nice and flat on the table. Couple of seconds. Quick squirt the activator. And then all we have left to do for the bottom half is the rear shield. Now I'm just going to put a tiny blob of glue in there, there's a little gap, just to make sure that's nice and secure. The shield fits, as I mentioned, with the little peg into a hole. Now I'm just going to make the hole a little bit deeper, just so it fits perfectly. And you may notice I've not actually got a drill bit on the end of here. I've got what's called a rosehead burr. I use these a lot, especially if I'm drilling holes for pegs, because they don't go straight. You can actually make a hole and then tilt the angle without actually increasing the size of the hole the peg goes through, but you can make a bigger void inside to sit a little bit more super glue. So you drill a hole in to the correct depth, and then you tilt it to the side and carry on drilling. You can do it all the way around, and you make a slightly ball-shaped hole, but the opening is actually smaller. Something I've just found very useful over the years. And there we have it. So that's the bottom half of the mech done. Now obviously there's these little hip caps, but we're going to leave those till later. So that's nice and solid. So I'm going to have a quick look at the torso. So again, there's a couple of little feeds. Now on this particular one, there's 4 main feeds. There's 3 on the back of the main cylinder, 1 in the middle, and 1 on either back edge. And then on these sections right at the top, there's a couple of little feeds that connect 2 parts, just to make sure we don't trap any bubbles and we get voids in the cast. So they just want removing. You'll be able to see them, just little tiny rods. Just take those off and take these feeds off the edge. Make sure they're nice and smooth. And just take a little bit of sandpaper and just make sure they're okay. Now here there are a series of holes that go around the edge of the cylinder. So again, I'm just going to take the burr and just drill out those holes just slightly, just to redefine the edge so they're the same size as everything else. Okay, now there's a bit of a feed in the middle here, on the end of here, so I'll just take that off. Again, just cut it so you have a nice flat, smooth, well-defined tip. Okay, so now this will just fit on by the main joint in the middle. So I think when I put this one together, again to try not to make it look too static, I want a little bit of movement in here, so I think I'm going to have this at an angle. So the legs are angled. I'm going to angle the body, make sure that all the arms are angled so doesn't look straight. again, just make sure it looks a little bit more natural. So these are the shoulder sections. Now again, these are ball joints as well. So the main feed on these is actually on the ball rather than on some detail. So just take a bit of time taking that off. Scratch that off. There's a little tiny bit of a gate on the edge of this armour section here, just on the corner. So we'll remove that as well. No mold lines on the rest of that piece, and it'll be the same for the other piece. So again, just cutting the gate feed off of the ball joint section, making sure it's nice and flat, cutting off any feeds. That's great. Okay. So just making sure these are nice and smooth. A little bit more difficult on these rounded pieces. Also need to make sure they fit into the ball socket. So try and keep away from having any flat, flat sections or ridges. I want to get it as smooth as possible. Quick blast with a sandpaper. Again, no real mold lines to worry about, which is great. So this is the head. Sorry, no, this is the exhaust. Now the feeds on these are right on the tips of the exhaust. A little bit tricky to get off, so just spend a little bit of time just making sure. Now I've actually gone off camera here, but I just want to make sure I can see what I'm doing. I will bring the piece back, 1 second. Again, the feeds are not only on the edge, the tip of the exhaust, but it's also a curved section again, so you have to make sure you take it off without breaking the rim of the exhaust. It's not too difficult, just need to take a little bit of care. Quick sand flat, no other prep work needed on that at all, and this just sits nice and easily over the back of the torso. You can put it on either side, doesn't matter, as long as it's the exhaust bits are facing to the middle. That's fine. Quick blast with the accelerator. Nice and easy. Okay, so the next bits we have to put on the torso are the fuel section. I'll just take this bit off here. So we have two of these, and these stick out of the back of the torso. They're both different. Again, it doesn't really matter which way round or which side you put them on. And they fit into two big circular recesses on the back. I mean, you'll be able to see it really clearly once you have the model in hand. Now these have little balls that go in the socket. I mean, you can angle these around a little bit. When I tend to put them in as if they come straight out. I mean, naturally that'll put them at an upward sloping angle and facing out slightly as well. But I mean, you can angle it if you prefer. So they go in the back like so. Now there's plenty of room, even once the arms are on. There's quite a big gap for those to go in, so don't worry too much about where you position them. I mean, if you're worried, just double check with the arms. Now I'm just going to hold that in straight with a bit of club super glue, quick spray with the activator, and we should be done. And then there's glue on the other side. I'm going to hold that straight as well. Just there, let the glue grab. And then again a quick squirt with the activator. And that'll just run down into the recess with capillary action. And there you go, that's the torso. So that's the main section of the Mako complete. Now I'm going to, as I mentioned, I'm going to turn the torso over to one side. So now I'm happy with where it's going to go. I'm just going to glue around the main peg just going to put a little bit of extra glue on this rim. And a couple of seconds. Quick spray. And we are done. So now I'm going to move on to the arms. Now these have the little feeds. There's only 2 of them. And they're right on the end of the main section of the arm, and then where it slopes down, you'll see a little tiny one, just at an angle as well. So just take that one off. Again, these particular casts that I have are really good quality. So there's very little prep work he's doing, which makes life a whole lot easier. Just spinning them around in my hand, just making sure I've not missed anything. For those that are going to paint these things up afterwards, you'll know the pain of getting to the painting stage, getting to the priming stage, or even worse, the actual painting stage, before you notice there's a bit of prep work that hasn't been completed. You know, a mold line, or a little bit of something left off is very frustrating to have to go back to fix and then reprime, or heaven forbid you've gone as far as painting. So it's really worth the time of just making sure you get all of that stuff done now. So turn every piece over in your hand, just check every single part of them, make sure nothing's going to cause you a headache later. And now we're just going to have a look at the weapon. So the Mako has 2 weapons. This is the first. It's a multi-barreled laser type weapon. The barrels are separate to the main section of the gun. So all I'm doing here is just taking out the feeds on the connection ring. So just make sure that's nice and flat. Other than that, there's not a lot to worry about. Now just looking here, there is a mold line down the side of here. It's not a massive mold line, but it does run the length of this side of the casing. I mean, now thankfully this is a flat section of the gun, so there's not a lot of detail to take off. So it's quite easy just to slice it off, just make sure it's sanded flat, which is fine. So that's done. And then the barrels. Now the barrel attaches to the main section by a peg. So we're going to cut the feed off the end of the barrel. So just make sure you're leaving enough barrel on. Now there's 2 triangle type supports here, just to make sure there was no bubbles in the rim. So you just need to cut down either side of the peg. So what you should be left with is a disc with just a single peg sticking out the middle. So these triangle support sections need to be just removed, otherwise it won't connect. Get rid of those. There we go, and that should stop blowing things over the desk. There we go. It should fit in nice and smooth. So I'm not going to waste any time. So some super glue on this peg. I'm actually just going to put a little bit of glue on this ring here, just so I've got a bigger contact area. Just a little bit. Make sure it's all nice and straight. Hold it for a few seconds. There we go. Okay, there's the main section of the gun. Now just behind this hand guard here, there's just a little tiny bit of a gate, so just take that out with your finger, it's fine. Now the arm's attached to both of the weapons at the side of the elbow and in the handle that runs through the middle of the hand. one arm fits better on one side than the other. For some reason, as they came out, when I made the original pattern work, there seems to be half a millimetre difference in the two arms. You can get both of them, but just to make sure that you're not putting any extra stress on, just double check. You'll find one arm fits better on one side than the other. But once you found the right arm, and there's only two to choose from, that should just clip straight in. And as you saw there, just a quick blob super glue and it's done. Now this one actually has two extra sections. We have a fuel tank and an energy tank and a scope that need to go on. So this energy tank attaches to the bottom of the gun. Now there's a little bit of a mod line that runs down the length of here. Again, nothing too serious, so I'm just going to very quickly scrape that line off. Quick sand it flat just to make sure that nothing shows up. No, that's all good. Just make sure it's clean on the other side as well. Okay, now this actually fits at almost a 45-degree angle underneath the gun. The connections are really straightforward. There's just a little tiny pin and a hole. Just line that up, a little bit of glue, let it grab. It weighs nothing, so you can let go pretty quickly without the weight of the piece pulling it apart. Quick squirt with the activator, and that's done. And then we need the scope. Now the scope, the main feed for the scope is actually on the bottom leg. So this attaches to the gun on two places. There's a flat panel section, and then there's like a bent pipe or cable connector at the back with a round foot, and the feed is actually on the bottom of the foot. So very much like the actual feet of the mech, where the peg actually goes onto the bottom. Just do exactly the same thing. Cut that off. Make sure you can stand it on the tabletop and it all sits flush. It's not a big job. And again, already just a quick bit of super glue and pop it on. Now bearing in mind I've just used activator on this piece, and so normally you get a few seconds to adjust it round. So just bear in mind, if you spray activator onto something, leave it a few seconds and then try to put something else on even nearby with super glue, the super glue will set quicker than normal. So just be aware of that, as you know, of where you're spraying the activator. As you can see there, it didn't go on perfectly straight the first time around. It wasn't a big issue, but if I'd have put it on and left it any length of time, I'd have had to cut that section back off. But there you go, nice and easy. So that's the multi-barreled laser finished. So we've got another weapon to go, and this is, I'm having this on the right arm. So these particular versions of the weapon only fit on one side. So let's make sure that's all clean. Now there's no scope or extra bits of scopes or anything to add onto there. That weapon is exactly as is. Just like the other arm, we have to attach the arm to the weapon. So again, just make sure the weapon is the right side up. So the arms, when they attach to the weapon, should point down slightly in relation to the alignment of the weapon. So just make sure you got the arm the right way up. Same kind of deal, so it fits in with the hand and the side of the elbow in the two recesses. That should just slide in and slot in nicely there. Just going to make sure it's straight while that glue grabs. Trusty activator. And there we go. Okay, so now we have two weapons with the arms attached. That one is the 160mm KSR cannon, so that, as opposed to the other one, which is a multi-barreled laser, this is a solid kinetic round cannon. And here, I'll just take this little bit off here. Okay, now these are both the lights. Now these fit to the arms as well. So where the weapons fit onto the outside of the arm, at the hand and the elbow, the lights fit on the inside elbow. Again, very little in the way of flash or mold lines. I'm just cutting off the feed, which is near the section that attaches to the arm, rather than an outside edge, which means everything just looks a little bit neater when it's all finished. Fine. And then we're just going to position these on each of the arms. They should fit on quite simply. Again, no force. There's only one place it'll go. I'll plop a super glue. And these lights should run parallel with the barrel of the weapon. So obviously the arm is at an angle, so if you run it parallel with the arm, the lights will actually always be facing down compared to where the weapons are pointing. So just make sure they run parallel with the weapon barrel and nothing else. And that's the correct way of assembling it. So again, the same on the other arm. The recessed dome is the lens area, so make sure that's the bit facing forward. Make sure it's all nice and straight. And there we have it. And there's the other arm. Quick blast with the activator, just to make sure it's all set. Okay, so I've already cleaned the shoulders up. So we're going to attach the shoulders and the gun after I've done this. Now this is the head, quite a small piece. Now there's only one feed on here on the back, so I've just cut that off. Now you'll notice on the shoulders aren't identical. The left shoulder has, in fact both shoulders on their front edge have a much larger cut off section on the armor plate. You'll have a look if you take the piece and spin it around in your hand. You can see it on the photo there. You can see a gap where you can see the gun, the light section through. If you notice on the back, when you have a look at the piece, there's only a tiny section cut out, whereas on the front it's a big section. So just make sure you have the arms the right way, the shoulders the right way around. It's just so you can see some of the gubbins and the detail from the front. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about pose on these. These kind of fit flush really in one area, just a ball socket, and there we have them on. Now, because these are ball joints, obviously we can swing them around. Now, as mentioned at the beginning, it's great not to have a static pose, unless of course that's exactly what you're after. But I'm just deciding on whether I want it to be walking. It's actually walking slightly to the left. It's turning left, so I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to have the left arm facing in the direction of the head. So let's get that one straight first of all, as if he's tracked a target on his left and has turned to face. So nice and straight there. So I'm just going to put some glue in the recess. Now I'm just going to line it up by looking above. Obviously I know it's straight from the side, but obviously you don't want to be, if you're choosing that as a pose, make sure obviously the barrel is pointing, not at the floor or not up at the sky. Try and get that as straight as you can. And then for the right arm, I think I'm going to have that one lowered slowly, so it's clear that the arm he's he's engaging a target with his left hand. That's where the emphasis is going to be on the figure. Yeah, I think. Yeah, just there. Okay. So same deal, quite simply, I'm just making sure all that's fine. I'm just going to put some glue on the recess for the right arm. Put that where I've decided, so slightly out compared to the other one, slightly down as well. There we go, set already. Trust the activator, quick squirt in, and we're done. And then all that's left now are 3 more components. So we've got the head, so I'm just going to line that up with the left hand gun, so the multi-barreled laser. It's quite fiddly with it being a small piece. Now that actually sits on a slightly domed peg into a recess, so you can obviously spin that in direction. You can also get a little bit of tilt on the head, either forward or back, or side to side, to give it a little bit more character. But I'm just going to go straight for the looking in the same direction as the left hand weapon. So that body, the head and the weapon of those all facing the same direction. Now these hip caps, if you can remember from the beginning, they have a gate feed. Now the gate feed are actually on the sides of these. Now these are actually round pieces, 2 layered, and where the gate feed is, you just need to take a little bit of time just to make sure you cut those off without breaking the other piece. Now what I'm going to do is on these, I'm just cutting them off so there's a flat block. I'm not worried too much about making sure it's a curved section, just as long as it looks neat. And these will sit in the opposite recess for the ball joint, because obviously the legs are the same on either side. It's the same component. So we're just going to cap the outside hip. Just make sure you get it central. And the same on the other side. Again, just make sure you get it central. Now what I've done on these is I've actually put the block section to the back, just so it's the same on both legs. Again, just straighten it up. Bear in mind, obviously I've sprayed everything with the activator, so the super glue grabs a little bit quicker than it would do normally. Quick spray. Super glue away. And we have a Mako. Now there are 4 more components to this model which I haven't attached as yet, purely because I can't really think any reason why you'd want to do this before painting. So on the back of each leg there are 2 curved cables that go from the back of the cylinder above the foot all the way to the top of the leg. If you put those on at the beginning, you are not going to be able to paint anything behind them. So I think what I would do is assemble the whole model. I mean, you can paint it like that. You could even keep the bottom half and the top half separate, and just to glue those together at the end as well. But this is just for the sake of completeness, so you can see how quickly it takes to assemble. And then I would probably put the 2 halves together, and then the final 4 cables on the back of the leg once everything has been painted, just to make things easy for you. So there we have it. That's the FDV4 Mako, all finished. Not in a static pose. He balances perfectly well, no problems. Now, as I mentioned, this is available now. 30 odd components, I mentioned at the beginning. It's about 4 inches tall when it's finished. That can vary slightly depending on how you balance the nozzles. And please, you can find me on Facebook if you just search for Filbot. That's Filbot. Like the page, and then any information or models or updates, will all be on there. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you like this video. I'll see you again very soon.